Before he even opened his eyes, Reed smiled widely at his first thought of the day. His smile turned into a small laugh when he heard a cute, quiet snore. He had never heard a woman snore before. As he inhaled, he caught the scent of her scent. Reed opened his eyes and looked up at the white ceiling. His smile grew even wider. It was true, he was in her apartment, and the naked body pressed against his belonged to the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. It was so hard to believe. All his life he was very shy with girls. He wasn't ugly, and he was relatively smart. He just didn't have the confidence to even try to get a girl. Well, at least not until last night. He had to take another look, just to be sure. Reed lowered his chin until he gently touched her long, silky black hair. Leilani rested her head in the hollow of his shoulder, and her arm was stretched across his chest. Very carefully so as not to wake her, Reed leaned down and kissed her forehead gently, then closed his eyes again and wondered how good life had been since he joined the Navy. Against his parents' wishes, he enlisted in the Navy immediately after graduating from high school. He didn't want to hurt them, but they had treated him like a child his whole life, and it was time to become a man. He loved the sea, so the Navy was an obvious choice. Through perseverance, he performed well through the entire training program and was assigned to the U.S. California, where he achieved the rank of Seaman First Class. As a young man from a small town in Indiana, Reed never thought he would ever see so much of the world. His ship participated in various training missions in the South Pacific and on the West Coast. He liked San Francisco, but this was paradise. A few months ago, President Roosevelt made Pearl Harbor their permanent base. He loved his parents, but he couldn't imagine how he could return to Indiana after living in paradise. He felt Leilani move. He opened his eyes and looked down at her smiling face. He still found it hard to believe that he was in bed with such a beautiful woman. She purred, "Good morning." She reached out to him with pursed lips. He met her halfway with a morning kiss. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a log," he replied. "Me too. I think we wore each other out yesterday." She turned to him and extended her hand. "Oh God, maybe I'm wrong," she said. "Something tells me you like me a little." They spent the next 20 minutes cuddling. Leilani found it in herself to spend as much time with him as possible. "What time do you need to be back?" she asked. "I have the weekend," he replied. "I don't have to get back to the ship until 18 o'clock tomorrow." "Oh well, any special plans for today?" "No, not really. I spend most of my time on the ship reading a book." "Wow, that sounds exciting," she joked. Leilani dated several sailors. Living close to Pearl, she didn't have many options. Most of them were just fun seekers who only wanted sex. If she liked a guy, he was lucky, but she had to like him. Reed liked her from the moment she saw him. He stood out in the crowd, not because he was flashy, but just the opposite. While everyone around him was loud, half passed out, and a general nuisance, Reed was fine, maybe even a little shy. She liked it. It was rare that she asked someone to dance, but there was something about him that caught her attention. Maybe it was his piercing blue eyes, she thought, but it was more than that. He had a quiet charisma. He was delightfully different from everyone she had dated before. After a few dances and a couple of drinks, she made the decision that they would wake up together in her bed. It was then that she learned the true nature of his shyness. She had to practically hit him over the head and drag him into her apartment, which made him even more adorable. "How about breakfast, and then we do something together? Do you like photography? I have a camera, and Oahu has some of the most beautiful scenery in the world." Leilani knew the island like the back of her hand and gave Reed a tour he would never forget. Every hour they got to know each other better and better. Reed was struck by Leilani's cheerfulness. He had never seen anyone spend their day with such pleasure and gratitude. Leilani had never met anyone who could make her laugh so easily. The more comfortable he became in her company, the more his personality revealed itself. He had no hidden agendas, no deep-rooted secrets. By evening, she felt as if she had known him all her life. "Tired?" she asked with a smile. They walked all day through hills and valleys with lush scenery. "A little," he admitted. You should be a coach, he joked. Aren't you tired? Maybe a little, but I do this all the time. Someday I'll show you the albums. I've been all over the island. I have hundreds of photographs. Some of them are even in color. You're really serious about photography, aren't you? I don't know if I'm serious, but I love documenting the beauty of the island. Who knows where life will take us? Maybe I'll end up in New Jersey someday. If that happens, I'll have albums to remember and look back on, she said with slight sadness. Hungry? It's almost dinner time. There's a good diner nearby. Not far turned out to be more than a mile. Reed was glad to be able to sit for a while. During dinner, he thought about how the day would end. He guessed that she probably had another date for the evening, which meant he might have to head back to the ship, but inside he couldn't help but smile. He had never met anyone like Leilani. He wondered what it meant to be in love. If it meant his heart beat like a drum every time he looked into her eyes, if it meant his pulse quickened at her gentle touch, if it meant he couldn't imagine his life without her. Then he was in love. How's the chicken? She asked. Very tasty, just like you said. I guess. I mean, a pretty girl like you must. Well, you're probably tired of my company, but... She roughly understood what he wanted to say, but then his shyness reappeared. She thought it was cute and somewhat flattering. He was very confident in his abilities, but the confidence disappeared when he was around her. She wondered if this meant he had the same feelings for her that she had for him. She decided to stop tormenting him and intervened. Actually, I was wondering if you had any plans for the evening. I'd like to see the inside of the new Yuso, if you're not too tired to dance a little. And then you can stay the night again if you want. Reed began to wonder if this whole weekend had been one big, incredible dream. He'd had maybe 12 or 15 dates so far, and he'd never gotten past second base. Now he's going to spend 2 nights in a row with the most beautiful woman in Hawaii. I'd love to, he replied enthusiastically. Okay, just one condition. If we spend the night together, you have to come with me to church tomorrow morning, and I have to warn you, my parents will be there. They'll probably ask you a dozen questions about your intentions, but you can just ignore them. She laughed. What if I don't want to ignore them? She looked at him and smiled. Well, then be honest with them, she replied. Reed nodded. I can do it, he said. Now I have a question. Yes. Do you think we can ask the waitress to call us a taxi? I really don't think I can walk to your apartment. Leilani laughed. I think we can arrange it. When they returned to Leilani's apartment, she asked Reed for his shirt. My shirt? Yeah, she's a little sweaty. I'll rinse her off and hang her outside to dry. Don't worry, she'll be dry by the time we leave. In the meantime, we need to take a bath. We both won't fit in my bathtub, but if you soap up my back, I'll soap yours. Agreed, he readily agreed. Me first, she said, starting to fill the water and dripping in some vanilla oil. She wasn't even trying to be sexy when she took off her clothes in front of him, but Reed had never seen anything that made his heart race so fast. With grace, she slipped into the warm, scented water. Reed knelt down next to the bathtub and lathered up the washcloth. With a smile on her face, Leilani threw her head back and purred, appreciating the way her boyfriend gently stroked her body with his hand. Still naked, Leilani knelt beside the tub and returned the favor. Reed felt like he was in heaven, feeling her gentle hands sliding over his body. They completed their bathing adventure by drying each other off with a towel. Leilani wrapped her towel around her body and tucked the corner above her right breast, holding it there. I better check your shirt and see if it's dry. Like this? He asked. Why not? She joked. Would you be jealous? Not me, I'm not the jealous type, but I'll have to fight every guy in the area who wants to attack you. Would you do this for me? She answered with a smile. They'll have to kill me to get to you. Well then, I better put something on, she laughed. I definitely don't want you to get hurt. It was almost 5:30 when they left. The evening was too nice to drive, so they decided to walk 6 blocks to a nice restaurant for dinner, and then continue their moonlit walk another 4 blocks to the Yuso. As they approached the end of her street, they were greeted with a magnificent view of the sunset. "Oh, Reed, look at the sunset." Leilani took his hand and laid her head on his shoulder. Reed put his arm around her waist, and they stopped to watch the kaleidoscope of colors melt into the Pacific Ocean. They had known each other for less than 24 hours, but had already developed strong feelings for each other. Every Saturday night, the USO had a live band. They might not have been Benny Goodman or Tommy Dorsey, but they were pretty good. Reed hadn't been to many dances in Indiana, so Leilani showed him a few jitterbug steps. It took him a few minutes, but he began to get the hang of it. As the orchestra slowed down with "This Love of Mine," Reed pulled her closer and her body melted into his. Her eyes closed and the romantic words of the song penetrated their souls and united them into one. They had been there for about an hour when they took a break and took a small table to rest. Reed excused himself to go to the men's room. As he walked out, he noticed 2 olive-green army uniforms from Hickam Field looming over his girlfriend. At first he thought she knew them, but as he got closer, her expression showed that she was irritated by their company. That was enough for Reed. He walked over to Leilani's chair and placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Sorry, gentlemen," he tried to be friendly. "She's with me." Leilani raised her hand and took his hand with a smile. Reed hoped they'd get the hint, but they weren't put off that easily. The larger of the two looked at his comrade and laughed, then turned his attention to Reed. "Go back to your ship, sailor. She is too good for you." They were a little bigger than him, a little older and probably more experienced, but it was his woman they were harassing. Reed showed no fear and stood in front of them both. At this moment, everyone heard another voice. "Hey, Reed, is there a problem here?" He looked over his shoulder and was very happy to see his 2 shipmates walking towards them. "I'm not sure," he replied, looking at the 2 bullies. "There is a problem?" This time the younger one spoke. "Come on, Brian, we don't want any trouble. There are plenty of girls here." Turning to Leilani, he continued, "You don't know what you've missed." With these words, they left. Internally, Reed breathed a sigh of relief and turned to his saviors. "Thank you, guys. I owe you one." He saw from their faces that they were jealous of his companion. He was usually the one who had to endure watching other guys go out with beautiful women. It was very nice to be in a different role. He smiled proudly and introduced them to Leilani. They talked for a while, then said goodbye. "Well, we need to get back to our companions. You two have a good evening. Reed, I'll see you on the ship on Monday." For the rest of the night, Leilani had stars in her eyes every time she looked at Reed. He wasn't afraid when confronted by these 2 guys in defense of his lady. He was her white knight, and in her mind, Reed would defeat the villains with one blow. Later that night, she expressed her gratitude and admiration for him in the most incredible way. The sun was barely breaking through the curtains, but Reed had been awake for an hour. The military discouraged late sleepers. A million thoughts swarmed in his head. The feelings he had for Leilani were completely new to him. There was no doubt that he loved her, but what could he do about it? He still had a year of service left. And of course, there was another question. How did she feel about him? He knew she loved him, but did she love him as much as he loved her? And how can he find out? He felt her begin to move. He looked and saw the smile on her face as she snuggled up to him and rested her head on his chest with a calming sigh. She hadn't opened her eyes yet, but he knew she was awake. "Good morning, beauty." She purred. "Good morning, handsome." She opened her eyes and looked at the clock on the nightstand. "Oh," she moaned, "it's already 6:30. We need to get ready for church." She looked at him. "You haven't changed your mind, have you?" "Are you kidding me? Missing the chance to meet the parents of the most wonderful woman on the island? No way." "Okay," she replied with a big smile, "because I want them to meet you too." She reached out and kissed him. "We don't have time right now, but if you want, we can come back here after the service and spend the whole day in bed." Now his smile was as wide as hers. "This sounds like pure heaven." "But we have to go now," she said, swinging her beautiful legs over the side of the bed. Go far. No, not far, maybe 20 minutes on foot. Can your legs handle it? She asked with a smile. I think I can handle it, he joked in response. The morning was just beginning when the two lovers left Leilani's apartment and headed to the church. The conversation was light. They joked about Reed meeting her parents. When they arrived, the pastor stood at the entrance to the church, greeting his congregation with a smile. Leilani looked for her parents, but decided that they were already inside. She took Reed's hand, and they joined the others, moving forward. The roar of the crowd drowned out the sound, but Reed could hear the buzz coming from afar. It was the sound of planes, many planes flying from the north. He looked up and saw a large dark cloud descending. "What the hell?" burst out from him. Airplanes were not uncommon. Hickam Field was home to the Army of Hawaii and a bomber base. It was also the headquarters of their Air Force. Leilani looked up to see what Reed was looking at. "What's happened?" "Something's wrong," he said. He didn't yet know what exactly, but he already felt a growing fear. "I know there are a few B-17s due to arrive this morning, but there must be hundreds of planes. And where are they coming from?" By this time, the increasingly louder hum from hundreds of aircraft engines had reached the ears of others. Everyone began to search for the source of the sound, and the quiet Sunday conversations of the crowd turned into nervous whispers. As their shadows covered more of the landscape, Reed was finally able to make out the outlines of the planes. He saw their round signs and bombs hanging under their wings. "This is Japanese Zeros," he shouted. "Hide, we are attacked." "Oh God," Leilani screamed. She grabbed Reed's hand. "You are sure?" "Yes, without a doubt. These are torpedoes under the wings. They are going to bomb the fleet." Reed looked into the eyes of the woman who owned his heart. He pulled her by the shoulders and kissed her, knowing that this could be their last kiss. When their lips parted, Leilani hugged him and squeezed, determined not to let go. "I love you," he whispered softly in her ear. He felt her sobs against his chest. "Oh God, I love you too, Reed. I love you so much. Let's go to church. They won't bomb the church, right?" "No, I don't think so," he replied. He tore her body away from his to look into her eyes one last time. "Go inside, dear. Find your parents and pray. Pray hard." "What about you? Come with me. We will all pray together." "I can't, honey. I need to get back to the ship." "No," she screamed. "You can't. Don't be stupid. They'll kill you." At that moment, they heard the first bomb explosions. Their bodies tensed as they saw plumes of black smoke rise into the air. "I have to, honey. I have to get there. People are depending on me. Now please go inside." "No," she cried. Leilani dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around his legs to keep him from moving. Reed looked and saw the pastor run up. He was a brave man and made sure everyone else was inside first before seeking shelter himself. He leaned down and carefully lifted his longtime parishioner to her feet. "Come on, Leilani, we must be brave. I'm afraid there are difficult times ahead. We will all have to do our part. We must face the future with strength and courage." Reed watched as the pastor led her into the church. She looked around before entering the building with the bell tower. Her eyes were red and puffy, and her chest was heaving with sobs. "I love you, Leilani. I love you with all my heart," he cried. As soon as the church door closed behind them, Reed took off at full speed. He heard more planes overhead as he cut through alleys and parking lots, taking the shortest route. As he turned the corner, he had his first view of the battleship Row. It looked like a scene from Dante's Inferno. There were fires everywhere, creating huge plumes of black smoke that darkened the sky. His ears were ringing from loud explosions, and the smell of gunpowder and burning oil overpowered the crisp Hawaiian air as he reached shore. Local fishermen, afraid of being on the water without shelter, headed towards the shore at full speed. Reed jumped into one of the abandoned boats and started the outboard motor with one pull. The bow of the boat rose out of the water as he gave full throttle. As he approached, Reed could make out silhouettes of people through the smoke. Come on, you son of a bitch, move," He cursed the low engine power. Every fiber of his body, every emotion told him that he had to get on board and protect his ship. He was so focused on the ship that he almost didn't notice Zero flying straight at him. There was no doubt that the bastard was targeting him. Without hesitation, he dove into the blood-red water as a hail of bullets reduced the small vessel to splinters. More hot lead rained down, penetrating the warm tropical waters around him and narrowly missing him. Reed swam as far underwater as he could, then emerged with long, powerful strokes, his ship only 100 yards away. Screams of agony filled the air as he approached. He looked up and saw a burning oil spill approaching him. Reed took a deep breath, lowered his head, and swam as hard as he could. He could not swim across this sea of fire. He needed to get to the ship or go back. The heat grew stronger the closer he swam. Luckily, someone lowered the ladder. He grabbed it and climbed aboard. When he reached the deck, he could already feel the ship listing to starboard and assumed that the California had been hit. His shipmates rushed for any weapon that could be used. He took a place behind the anti-aircraft weapon and turned it around to take aim at another Mitsubishi. He pulled the trigger just as the plane was about to attack and sent it to a watery grave. There was chaos on board the ship. The men were well prepared, but no one was prepared for a surprise attack of this magnitude. Reed was running low on ammunition. One of his comrades heard him shouting for more cartridges. "The power's out. The ammunition elevators aren't working," he shouted, trying to be heard above all the noise. Ensign Jones and Midshipman Ferris have organized a chain of guys passing rounds up, but it's taking time. We'll try to get you as much as possible. "Faster," Reed shouted back. "I'm almost out of ammo." He had to conserve his remaining ammo by aiming carefully and firing short bursts. With his ammunition nearly exhausted, Reed spotted another Zero coming out of its dive and sent it flying into the Pacific Ocean. After a couple of minutes, a group of guys placed 3 boxes of ammunition belts at his feet, then turned around and ran for more. So far, he had shot down 5 Japanese Zeros, one of which was about to shoot down one of the P-40 Tomahawks that had joined the dogfight at Hickam Field. He was about to hit the 6th when everything went black. Not far away, at New Hope Church, a courageous pastor led a frightened congregation in prayer as the sounds of war raged outside. Leilani, surrounded by her father and mother, was inconsolable. Her father tried to calm her down. "Honey, we'll be fine. They don't care about civilians. They won't bomb a church." No, you don't understand," she said, quickly shaking her head. "Reed has returned to his ship. He will be killed," she screamed in hysterics. I tried to get him to come with me, but he said... Again, she burst into tears and buried her face in her hands. Her mother looked at Leilani's father with a questioning expression on her face. He just shook his head with a slight shrug. They didn't know who she was talking about. The pastor came up and told them that he had seen Leilani in the company of a young man shortly before the bombing began. Her mother and father waited for her to cry. Her mother reached out and stroked her hair. "Honey, who is Reed?" "This is the man I love," she answered through sobs. "He's unlike anyone I've ever met. He's brave, kind, smart, and compassionate. And he loves me too." Leilani worked and lived in her own apartment. Her father still considered her too young for love. "Honey, you've never mentioned him before. When did you meet him?" "Friday night," she answered. "Dad, I know what you're going to say, but I love him. I can't imagine never seeing him again," she said, breaking into tears again. Her mother tried to calm her down. "Darling, I'm sure you'll see him again." Leilani knew the chances were almost zero. She didn't recognize his last name and didn't think he knew it. With the amount of time they spent together, last names didn't seem important. Back then. Now, if he goes to war, they won't even be able to write to each other. He knew where she lived, but with the war starting, what were the chances that he would be able to return there? Leilani's heart was being torn apart piece by the realization that she would never see Red again. "Sailor Prescott, can you hear me?" The ringing in his ears was almost deafening, so much so that Reed could barely hear the nurse's voice. It was also painful to open my eyes from the bright light. He squinted his eyes for a moment, then closed them again and groaned in pain. His whole body felt like it had gone through a meat grinder. What? What happened? All in due time, Seaman Prescott. Can you hear me okay? Barely, he replied. My ears are ringing terribly. We assumed this would happen. I'm afraid there's nothing we can do about it, but it will go away on its own in time. You're lucky you still have your eardrums. How are you feeling otherwise? Any nausea or abdominal pain? No, but my whole body hurts. Suddenly, he began to remember the attack. My ship, what happened? Are we at war? I'm sorry, she answered honestly. I don't know about your ship, but from what I heard, all the battleships were sunk. President Roosevelt declared war on Japan yesterday. Yesterday? What day is it today? Today is Tuesday. It's almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You have a concussion. You're lucky. You were thrown into the water by a blast wave, but a group of sailors who were on boats and saving people managed to get to you before you drowned. Leilani, is she okay? She was entering New Hope Church the last time I saw her. Were there any civilian casualties? Yes, I'm afraid so. Last I heard, 65 civilians were killed, and there are still more missing. Most of them were people working at the base. I didn't hear of any churches being damaged. I need to check if she's okay, Reed said, trying to sit up. Hey, hot guy, you're not going anywhere, at least not yet. That explosion that hit you turned your body into a carrot before you fell into the water. It's a miracle you don't have any broken bones. Still, you are not able to go anywhere now. It will be several days before you can get up. Now calm down. I'll tell the doctor that you're awake. I'm sure he'll want to talk to you, she said with a smile before leaving the room. Reed was not happy with the nurse's diagnosis. It hurt, but he forced himself to sit up and slowly tried to lift his legs off the bed. He had never felt such pain and cried out, trying to get up. Hey, an angry voice came from the doorway as Reed collapsed back onto the mattress. What are you doing? Didn't the nurse tell you that you'll need to stay in bed for a few days? Reed watched as a young man in white walked over and helped him back to a horizontal position. Doctor, I need to check on my girlfriend. I need to make sure she's okay, he explained. Sorry, but we'll have to wait, answered the young doctor. As you've just seen, you're in no condition to go anywhere right now. You're lucky you didn't fall on your face. Your body has suffered enormous trauma from the blast and subsequent fall into the water. You have a lot of internal swelling, much of it around the spinal column, which puts pressure on the nervous system. That's why you feel so much pain. We are giving you anti-inflammatory drugs, but it will still take time for the swelling to go down. Any physical activity will worsen the inflammation and delay your recovery, so stay in bed until I say otherwise, understand? Yes, sir, Reed agreed reluctantly. But I need to contact Leilani somehow. I need to find out if she's okay. Look, I understand this is difficult, but you have to put your personal desires aside for now. The Arizona sank with over 1,000 people on board, and an estimated another 1,000 people died. President Roosevelt declared war on Japan yesterday, which means that we will be at war with Germany and Italy. This is just the beginning, Sailor Prescott. I'm afraid we have a long and hard road ahead of us in the coming years. So, as I said, stay in bed and don't try to be a hero again until I say that this is possible. Okay, doctor. He thought for a moment. Doctor? Yes? Will I be okay? I mean, will I be able to get back on track? I'm afraid so. You're in a lot of pain right now, but once the swelling goes down, you'll be fine. Thanks to painkillers and anti-inflammatory drugs, the next couple of days were bearable. On Thursday, Reed felt well enough to write a letter to his mom and dad to let them know he was okay, but wouldn't be able to see them for a while. On Friday, he received a surprise visit from Captain Bunkley, commander of the U.S. California. Reed was resting with his eyes closed when he heard footsteps. They were too heavy for it to be his nurse. He opened his eyes and saw an old, battle-hardened, slender man. Not having seen his commander since the attack, Reed thought he looked older, sadder, more tired. "Captain Bunkley, sir," said Reed, raising his hand with difficulty in a salute. "At ease, Sergeant Major. I am aware of your condition, so we can do without fireworks for now." Hearing a mistake in rank, Reed assumed that the captain was visiting several sailors and confused him with someone else. "Sir, this is Seaman First Class Reed Prescott, sir." "This is where you go wrong, son. As of yesterday, you are Petty Officer First Class Prescott. Congratulations, Reed." "Wow, I never expected. I also nominated you and several others for an award for valor. You earned your uniform that day, Chief. You shot down 5 of those bastards, Reed. Who knows how many lives you saved." "Thank you. I don't know what to say. I just wanted to shoot down more of them. We lost a lot, sir. The nurse said about 2,000 people died. How many of them were on our ship?" "I'm afraid we've been hit hard. We've lost nearly 100 men, and about 60 more are wounded." "Oh God," Reed moaned. "What about the ship?" "It's at the bottom of the harbor now. We've sent divers down there to assess the damage. So far, it looks like most of the ships can be raised and salvaged, but that won't happen overnight. Meanwhile, virtually every factory on the mainland is being converted for war. I heard you tried to get out of bed the next day. Do what the doctors tell you. You will be transferred to an aircraft carrier as soon as you recover. These are almost the only ships we have left afloat at the moment. You will be transferred again later to a new battleship as soon as they are ready to go to sea. Is there anything I can do for you? Magazines, puzzles, or something else to occupy your time?" "Sir, if it is not too much to ask, there is one thing you could do for me." "Just name it, Reed," the captain replied. "Sir, I met a girl on Friday night. We spent the weekend together, but I didn't get her last name. She lives in one of the apartments in the hills above Pearl. I really want to make sure she's okay, sir." "Do you know the address of the apartment?" I never looked. I could find her, but I don't know the address." "I'm afraid you won't have time to do much more than board the ship once you're discharged from here, son." Reed was afraid of this. His heart broke at the thought of going to war without knowing if she was okay. "What is her name?" asked the captain. "Leilani, sir." "I can access the list of dead and wounded civilians. I'll check it for Leilani's name, but that's all I can do." "I would really appreciate it, sir. I just need to know she's okay." Suddenly, he thought of something else. "Sir, she goes to the New Hope Church on Killino Street. The pastor there seems to know her. We were going there when the bombing started. He could tell you if she's okay, sir." "I can't promise anything, but I'll try to get there." "Thank you, sir." Reed suggested that word of his promotion and medal got out because the staff treated him like a king. Physically, every day was better than the previous one. By the following Tuesday, he was back on his feet, although it was still painful. One of the nurses explained that some of the pain and stiffness was due to muscle atrophy due to long periods of inactivity. "Whose fault is it?" he joked. On Thursday, Reed was sitting in bed, eating dinner, and looking forward to being discharged the next day, when Captain Bunkley entered the room, carrying a briefcase. "Sir," Reed said, putting down his fork and quickly raising his hand in a salute. The captain saluted him in return. "Captain, have you found out anything about Leilani? Is she okay?" "I went to the New Hope Church, but it was locked. The rectory was also locked. I saw a woman living next door and asked her about the pastor. She said he had locked everything up and signed up to volunteer the next day." After the attack, Reed's heart sank. This was his last hope to find out if Leilani was okay. "But," the captain continued, "she was home on Sunday and saw everyone leaving the church after the attack around 10:30. I'm sure they all waited until they were sure it was over. The neighbor said no one was hurt. And the church looked fine. I didn't see any damage. I also checked the records, and no Leilani was among the injured or dead, So I think your girl is fine, Reed. This was good news, maybe not final, but almost. He sighed with relief. Thank you, sir. You're welcome, Chief Prescott. Now, he said, stepping forward and placing his briefcase on the small table by the bed, to my official duties. He latched the briefcase and opened it. They told me you can stand, Reed, so please stand. Anticipating what was to come, Reed stood at attention. At that moment, his doctor and nurses walked through the doorway, all with smiles on their faces. Reed guessed they must have been listening outside. Captain Bunkley stepped forward. Petty Officer First Class, Reed Prescott, for valor above and beyond the call of duty, I award you the Medal of Honor. He handed Reed the medal box and stepped back, raising his hand in a salute. Congratulations, Chief Prescott, and thank you. Reed held his medal in his left hand and saluted with his right. Thank you, sir. The staff applauded and congratulated him. Once the captain returned the honor, he reached into his briefcase again, pulled out a large envelope, and handed it to Reed. This is yours too, Chief Prescott. Reed looked inside and saw his new stripes. Thank you again, Captain. The captain nodded and reached into his briefcase again. And these are your new orders, he said. You've been transferred to us Hornet. Reed took the orders and glanced over them. As he had expected, he needed to report for duty immediately after being discharged from the hospital. There was no time to check on Lilani. Will I still serve under your command, sir? He asked the captain. I'm afraid not, Reed. I'm being promoted to admiral and will remain at Pearl to coordinate the recovery of California and its preparation for battle. I'll be retiring soon. I've already been through one world war. I'm too old for another. You will still be part of the Pacific Fleet under the command of Admiral Nimitz. He reached out and shook Reed's hand. Good luck out there, Reed. It was an honor to have you under my command. Reed stood at attention and quickly raised his hand in honor. Every man on the U.S. California knew that their captain was a true war hero. His bravery during the First World War was well known. Sir, may I say what an honor it was for me too, sir. Captain Bunkley returned the honor. Thanks, Chief Prescott. Now go show those bastards what they started and kick their ass. Yes, sir. With these words, the captain turned and left the room. That was the last time Reed saw him. The next day, he was discharged from the hospital and he went to work. Before he knew it, he was standing on the deck of the largest ship he had ever seen, the U.S. Hornet. It was an entire city, equipped with 3 full squadrons of the Navy's finest combat aircraft and pilots. A couple of months later, US Hornet arrived at the Naval Air Station in Alameda, California. Reed and his comrade watched as a squadron of B-25s were loaded onto the deck. Jesus, I wonder what's going on. I don't know, replied his comrade, but Colonel Doolittle is there giving orders. Holy devil, right? It's him, and you know whatever happens, if he's involved, it's going to be something big. After setting out to sea, Captain Mitcher informed the ship's crew that they were heading deep behind enemy lines. They were going to bomb Japan. 2 months later, Reed found himself in the thick of action at the Battle of Midway. Reed knew the carrier was a temporary assignment. A couple of months after Midway, he was transferred to the S. Tennessee. One of the battleships sunk at Pearl Harbor, but not as badly damaged as the others. It was repaired and put back into service just a few months after the attack. Over the next 3 years, Reed fought in some of the worst naval battles of the war, including the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. They were in the South China Sea in September when they heard the news. Japan had surrendered. The war was over. Reed went straight to the captain to arrange a return to Pearl. All he could think about was Lilani. He prayed that she was still single because he had every intention of marrying her. He was shocked to learn Tennessee will go to Japan as part of the occupation forces. The captain had no idea how long they would be there. By the end of the war, Reed had earned a chestful of medals and the rank of Chief Petty Officer. It was November 45 when he learned that they were finally going home. He rushed back to the captain's cabin and knocked on the door. coming in. Reed stood at attention and saluted. "Yeah, what's wrong, Senior Chief Prescott?" asked Captain Cope. "Sir, I just got word that we are heading home. Shall we return to Pearl, sir?" "Jesus Christ, Chief, aren't you tired of the Pacific Islands already?" "No, we're heading to the Philadelphia Navy Yard." "Sir, may I speak freely, sir?" "Yes, of course. What do you need?" "Sir, I need to get back to Pearl somehow. The girl I'm going to marry is there. We haven't had any contact since the attack. I need to go back to make sure she's okay and ask her to get married, sir." "Yeah, I see." Reed heard the sympathy in his voice. "I wish I could help, Chief, I really do, but there's nothing I can do." "Sir, perhaps I can disembark the ship and find transportation back to Pearl." "Chief, just because the war is over doesn't mean you're no longer in the Navy. Until you have your discharge papers, you are still a member of the crew of this ship. What you are proposing would be desertion." Reed's heart sank. He was literally holding back tears. The captain was sympathetic to this, but was obviously forced to obey orders. "Look, Chief, we all have girlfriends and wives that we want to come home to. The last time I saw my wife and children was 3 months before the attack on Pearl. My son was only 12 when I left. A few months ago, he graduated from high school. I'm as worried as you are, as is every man on this ship, but we still have a duty to fulfill. You'll just have to hang in there a little longer." Reed took the captain's words to heart and felt a little ashamed of his selfishness. "Yes, sir," he replied, saluting before walking away. Returning to his cabin, Reed thought about what the captain had said. Parents, girlfriends, wives, children. Most likely, there was no man on board who was looking forward to going home. Among them will be his own parents. And yet, none of this filled the hole in his heart. How many times had he dreamed of Leilani being in his arms, kissing her, making love to her? Whether on a ship or a plane, he had to somehow get back to Pearl. He had to find her. It was December 7, 1945, when they arrived at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. It was pure chaos as friends, relatives, and lovers greeted the men as they exited the ship. Reed watched as some of the bravest people he had ever known greeted their loved ones with tears of joy. He was happy for them, but at the same time it contributed to his own loneliness and grief. He wondered if he would ever see her again. First things first. He had to call home and tell his mother and father that he was okay and explain why he hadn't come home for a while. He mentioned Leilani in every letter he wrote to them. He was sure they would understand. He will then find a way to return to Pearl Harbor to find his love. It took him a couple of hours to fill his pocket with change and find a payphone that was not yet busy. His mother answered the phone on the third ring. "Hello." "Hi, Mom." Her heart almost exploded with excitement. "Reed," she screamed. "Reed, is that really you?" "It's actually me, Mom. Our ship docked hours ago, but this is the first chance I had to call." "Oh, son, it's so nice to hear your voice." At that moment, he heard someone speaking, but it was not his father. The voice was female. "Mom, excuse me, do you have company? I can call you back if you want. I'll be stuck here for a few days waiting for my discharge papers." "No, no, Reed." It was Carol Johnson. "You remember her, don't you?" "Yes, of course, Mom. I took her to her high school prom." "That's right. She still talks about it. She says you've been a real gentleman all evening." Reed remembered this very well. They both had a great time at the dance, so he was confused as to why she was so angry when he drove her home right after. A week later, his best friend, Jack Laurie, gave him a hint and then laughed and laughed at him. This was the end of their friendship. He still felt a little embarrassed just hearing her name. "What is she doing there, Mom?" He heard his mother struggling to speak and began to feel a sense of fear. She helped me around the house, dear. Reed, your father." He heard her son. Something was definitely wrong. "Your father has lung cancer, dear. He hasn't worked for the last 6 months. He's in bed now. He just can't do anything anymore. Carol helped me with cooking and housework. She was a real godsend, dear." The news was devastating. Suddenly, something even more important than getting to Pearl appeared. He needed to return home. He was granted emergency leave and jumped on the first train heading west. All trips were free for returning military personnel. The next day, he walked through the front door of the house where he grew up. He heard his name before he even set the duffel bag down, only it wasn't his mom or dad, it was Carol Johnson. Reed, she rushed forward, wrapped her arms around his neck, and kissed him passionately on the lips. He was so shocked that he didn't know what to do. The last time he saw her, she was still angry with him. When she finally broke the kiss, she looked into his surprised face. "Oh, sorry. I probably shouldn't have done this, but I'm so glad to see you," she explained. When she let him go, Reed saw his mother standing behind her with a big smile. "Hi, son," she said, extending her arm for a hug. "Hi, Mom," he said, ending the hug. They kissed each other on the cheek and parted. "Like Dad?" "I'm afraid things aren't going well for him, dear. He's upstairs, but he must not be sleeping yet. Why don't you get up? He wanted to see you so bad." Reed turned towards the stairs. "Oh, honey, he's not the same man he used to be. Try not to look shocked when you see him," she added. "Okay, Mom." He took the stairs two at a time. His parents' room was at the end of the corridor. He looked through the door of his old room and saw women's clothes on the bed. Carol was apparently asleep there. He heard his father cough and calm down before going to the master bedroom. His mother wasn't kidding. It was hard not to show shock. His father worked in a steel mill all his life. He was always a strong and imposing man whom no one in their right mind would ever want to cross. He was covered with a blanket, but his arms were out. Instead of the strong, muscular arms Reed remembered, they were thin twigs. There were deep, dark circles around his eyes, and his entire face was wrinkled. Even with his mother's warning, he wasn't prepared for what he saw, but he tried his best to keep a smile on his face and not show his worry. "Hello, Father." The smile was weak, but it was still there. "Hello, my boy." There were tears in his eyes. "I'm so glad you came back. So many people here didn't come back." His father began to cry. Reed quickly walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. He leaned over and hugged his father. "It's okay, Dad. I'm home safe and sound," he whispered in his father's ear. "Now all we have to do is fix you." "I'm afraid that ship has already sailed," he said, chuckling at his own pun. "Nonsense, Dad. Don't give up. We'll find a way." His father smiled, knowing that his son was speaking sincerely, but he also knew that he only had a few weeks left. They talked for a while, but Reed could see that his father was tired. He kissed him on the cheek and told him to rest. When Reed entered the kitchen, his mother was making tuna salad and Carol was preparing bread for sandwiches. "Is he still awake?" asked his mother. "I want to try and feed him before he takes his nap." "He was still awake when I left, but you better hurry. He seems very tired. So I came down so he could rest." Carol quickly prepared a sandwich and poured a glass of milk. "I'll take this to him right now," she said, heading towards the stairs. Reed took the opportunity to speak with his mother alone. "Mom, can't we do anything for Dad?" "I'm afraid not, son. You know your father. He had trouble breathing, but he didn't tell anyone. Then one night we were listening to the radio when he started coughing up blood. I called Dr. Disud King right away. He arrived an hour later, looked at your father, and took him to the hospital in his car. They did an X-ray, and by that time they found the cancer had spread to other organs." "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "Son, you were in the middle of a war. We certainly didn't want to distract you from what you needed to do to survive." Reed saw tears in his mother's eyes, and it brought tears to his own. His mother wiped her eyes and asked if he was hungry. She made him a sandwich and poured him a cup of coffee. Carol still hadn't returned, and he was curious. "I see Carol is sleeping here." "Yeah, but she said she'd sleep on the couch, so you could sleep in your old room. You'll stay, right?" Reed hasn't forgotten about Leilani. "Well, I need to get to Hawaii sometime for a while, but I won't be late. I'll be back as soon as I can." Hawaii, his mother almost shouted. How are you going to get there? We don't have the money to send you. I know. I have some savings, Mom. Besides, I'm still in the Navy. Hopefully I can find transportation. Son, we desperately need you here, she cried. Is it because of that girl you wrote to us about? Is that why you need to leave? Yes, Mom, I love her. I have to go there to try to find her. I'm going to marry her. Son, you don't even know if she still lives there. You said in your letters that you don't know her last name. How will you find her? Well, I know where she lives, or at least used to live. If she moved, maybe whoever lives there now can give me her new address. Son, please be reasonable. Even if you leave now, your father will be gone by the time you return. I need you, son. Your father needs you, please. Mom, I thought Dad still had a lot of time. You're right, I can't leave now, not at this time. She saw tears in her son's eyes and put her hand on his. I know what it's like to be in love, son. I know how hard it is for you right now, but I don't know what I would do without you. I know, Mom, he said with a sigh. I have 30 days of family leave. I should have my discharge papers by the time it ends. I'll call my captain to see if the process can be expedited to make sure, and then I'll find a job. His mother felt sorry for her son, but she had no choice but to encourage him to do so. They had no income, and the savings accumulated from his father's 20-odd years of working in factories were almost gone. She thought that talking about Carol might show him that he didn't have to go to Hawaii to find a woman who was interested in him. I think you broke Carol's heart when you wrote to us about Leilani. Carol, why did I have to break her heart? I don't think she even loves me. Oh, I don't agree with you, son. She cared about you just like the rest of us. Mom, we haven't spoken since that night at prom. Well, whatever happened, she clearly forgot it. When your father could still go to church, she went with us and prayed with everyone for your well-being. Every time we received a letter from you, she always asked for it to be read after us. She had tears in her eyes when she read about Leilani. I'm telling you, son, she has real feelings for you. At that moment, she became quiet and nodded her head towards the kitchen. Reed correctly guessed that Carol was returning. Mrs. Kerr Prescott saw the empty plate Carol was holding. Did he eat the whole sandwich? Yeah, he's in a much better mood because Reed is home, she replied, putting the plate in the sink. He was very tired. He said he was going to take a nap. Reed spoke. Carol, I understand that you suggested sleeping on the couch. Yeah, it's not hard for me, honestly. I thought you'd want your room back. Well, I appreciate it, but I'm not going to make you sleep here. I'll take care of the couch for now. You are sure? She asked hopefully. Yes, I'm sure, he replied with a smile. Hey, Mom, he turned to her again. What does the basement look like now? Oh, I don't know, son. I haven't been there for a long time. I think your father left everything there. Why are you asking? Well, maybe I can set up some kind of bedroom there. Can I help? Carol suggested. Of course, if you want. Reed called his captain and explained the situation. Captain Cope promised to do everything possible to expedite the receipt of discharge documents. What about that girl in Hawaii? I don't know what to do, Captain. I love her with all my heart, but I can't leave my family at this time. I think they'll be hiring in the factories. They pay better than any other jobs here. That's why I need these documents. Sir, I'm not sure they'll take me without them. I'll do my best to get them to you as soon as possible, Chief Petty Officer Prescott, and if I don't see you again after this, I wish you good luck and happiness in life. You were an excellent non-commissioned officer, Prescott, cool under fire and always holding your own. The situation is under control. I am sure you will succeed. Thank you, Captain. I really appreciate it. I'll try my best. I know what you will do. I'll make sure you get your papers as soon as possible, Prescott. Take care of yourself. With that, the two men said goodbye. Reed took a deep breath. He, like millions of other people, was happy that the war was over, but he could not shake the feeling of sadness and loneliness, thinking that he would never again see the people with whom he served. Call it a woman's intuition, but it was as if his mother and Carol knew not to bother him when Reed went to the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. He returned to the living room and sat down in his father's favorite chair to reflect on the past 4 years. He thought about Leilani, of course, but mostly about the people who fought alongside him. He lost many friends at Pearl Harbor and many more over the years, some of whom had to be buried at sea, depriving their families of the chance to say goodbye. His eyes began to glaze over as he wondered why they and not him. Was it God's will, fate, or just dumb luck? He couldn't help but feel guilty to some extent. He didn't see her, but Carol was watching him from the kitchen. She seemed to read his thoughts. He was surprised when she came over, sat on his lap, and kissed him on the cheek. I know none of us can even imagine the horrors you've seen, the friends and people you've seen die, but please, if there's anything I can do to make your life easier, just tell me, Reed. He was still puzzled as he looked into her sympathetic eyes. People could change, he thought, apparently, but even though many years had passed, he still remembered how angry she was and some of the things she said when he drove her home after prom. He decided that now was not the time or place to reopen old wounds, so he smiled. You're already making my life easier by volunteering to help in the basement. Knowing my dad, it's probably a real mess down there. I think you'll regret offering your help. There's no time to waste, she answered happily. Let's go down and see how bad it is. They told his mother they were going to check the basement. It was a mess, but manageable. Reed found some wood and drywall stored in one of the corners. Carol had already started moving boxes to clear some space. They were only there long enough to assess what needed to be done and reconsider some things. Hey, Mom, what's all this wood here for? Oh, your dad always hated that we only had 2 bedrooms. All his friends had 3 bedrooms. A couple of years ago, his friend, Jack, convinced him that the 2 of them could add a 3rd bedroom. Within a week, Jack was moving all this wood here and stuff on his pickup. I don't know where he got it from. He probably stole it from some construction site. What happened? Well, when they started really thinking about it, they realized they couldn't do the foundation, electrical, and heating themselves. When your dad started getting estimates for all of that, he decided it was too expensive and forgot about the idea, why are you asking? Well, there's enough here to make a small bedroom. You can do it? Of course, the heating and electrics are already there. All I have to do is fence off the corner and put in a couple of walls and a ceiling. Do you mind if I do that? Of course not, son. Do what you want there. Carol wasn't a particularly good carpenter, but she tried her best to help. Reed bought some electrical wire and hooked up to the distribution panel to install a ceiling light and a couple of wall outlets. It was close enough to the stove that there was no need to worry about heat. Carol went with him to look for a used dresser and a single bed frame. Carol tried to convince him to buy a double bed, but after sleeping in bunks for the past few years, a single bed seemed more than enough. He bought a new box spring and mattress. In just 3 days, Reed and Carol built a small, cozy house with all the comforts of home. He liked the idea of having his own space. Even Carol was excited, but for a different reason. She had plans to make him forget about that girl in Hawaii. She wasn't getting any younger. She needed a man, and Reed was the main candidate. In the 9 months she spent with the Prescotts, she learned a lot about their son. He was smart, but she knew that from school. He was hard-working and reliable. Although she knew he drank in moderation, Reed was definitely not the type to sit around a bar on a Friday night and drink away his paycheck, like her father had done. She already had a great advantage living there and caring for his parents, but the war had made good bachelors a scarce commodity, so she needed to make sure she got Reed in the sack before any other girl got to him first. She knew that he would never come up to her room. It was right down the hall from his mom and dad. They will be able to hear everything. Even the couch was right under his parents' bed, but the basement was perfect. About 2 weeks after speaking with his captain, Reed received his discharge papers in the mail. But by then his father had only days to live. He helped his mother pay the bills and still had some savings left so he could wait before applying for a job. For now, he was going to spend every free moment with his father. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when Mrs. Ray Prescott carefully descended the stairs to the basement. She shook her son gently. "Reed, honey, it's your father, He's having a hard time breathing. Could you come upstairs?" "Sure, Mom. Just give me a second to put something on, and I'll be right there." He had already put on his trousers and shirt when his mother reached the top of the stairs and was right behind her. When they entered, Frank Prescott was wheezing very slowly. His breathing was shallow and weak. Reed sat on the edge of the bed and lowered his head to quietly say, Dad, do you want to go to the hospital?" Too weak to speak, he slowly shook his head. He had been going downhill all week. He knew he wouldn't survive the night, and he wanted to die at home. Reed's mother tried her best to stay strong. She had been holding back tears all week, but not anymore. She knew this would happen. No matter how hard she tried to prepare, in the end, it was simply impossible to control the grief. She took her lover's hand in hers and looked at her son. "Reed, go get Carol. She'll want to be here." He ran down the corridor and woke her up. What is this?" she asked, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "It's Dad, I think this is the end." "Oh no," she exclaimed, jumping out of bed naked. She threw on her robe and followed Reed back to the bedroom. His mother lay next to the man she had loved for more than 26 years. Tears rained down as she spoke quietly to him. "I am with you, my dear. I'm here with Reed and Carol. We love you very much. You were a wonderful person, dear. I couldn't have asked for a better husband." "And I couldn't ask for a better father," Reed chimed in. "We all love you, Dad." "Do you remember when you proposed, dear?" sobbed his grieving wife, squeezing out a slight smile through her tears. "I don't know why you were so scared. I've been waiting months for you to ask. You should have known that my answer would be yes, but you were so nervous that you dropped the ring." This brought a small smile to his exhausted face as he nodded his head. "That was the moment you made me the happiest woman on earth." She squeezed his hand very gently. "You know, this is not the end," she continued. "We will be together again, and next time it will be forever," she said with confidence. The small smile on her husband's face widened as he took his last breath. It took almost an hour before anyone could stop crying and come to their senses. Carol was first. Although she had actually only known him for less than a year, she had learned to love him as the father she wished she had. I'm going to go down and make some coffee," she sobbed. Reed stayed with his mother for another 15 minutes. "Mom, the coffee should be ready by now. Why don't you go further? I'll be down in a minute or two." Once his mother came downstairs, Reed leaned down and kissed his father's forehead before covering his body with the sheets, an action that always seemed so final, and he wanted to spare his mother. His mom and dad had already chosen and paid for plots in the cemetery, but Reed took charge of all the funeral arrangements. He knew that his father had many friends, but he was surprised to see that more than 200 people came to the farewell party, most of them from the steel mills. Returning home from the funeral, Reed's mother was inconsolable. She kept herself under control throughout the wake and funeral, but after it was over, she had to let it out. Carol on one side and Reed on the other, they comforted her half the night. It was around 1 a.m. when they finally put her to bed, at which point Carol saw an opportunity. It was a calculated risk, but she had to seduce someday, and she knew Reed was vulnerable. "Reed, can I sleep with you tonight?" I don't mean anything sexual," she quickly added. "I just need you to hold me. I really don't want to be alone tonight. I thought about asking your mother, but I think she would prefer to be alone and grieve as she pleases." His first instinct was to immediately say no. He hadn't had a woman in his bed since that last night with Leilani, and he felt a pang of guilt for even thinking about it. But he also began to doubt if he'd ever see Leilani again. He felt trapped by his circumstances, and he felt guilty about something else. His father didn't die intentionally. It wasn't his mother's fault that she had to depend on him. He had to face the reality that he would most likely never see his true love again. He looked at Carol. She seemed to be sincere about the fact that she just needed someone to hold her. Someone else who needed him. "Okay, but you need to wear something," he said. "Oh, sure." She had no plans to try to seduce him right away. From his letters, she knew that he was in love with another woman. She would have to take things slowly, but with the help of his mother, who Carol knew was already on her side, she would one day wear his wedding ring. Reed waited a few more days before heading to the factory. He wanted to make sure his mother would be okay if he left. Early one morning, he drove into Inland Steel's huge complex of offices and giant buildings, belching huge clouds of black smoke. Suddenly, he remembered taking the same trip with his father when he was about 9. It was the height of the Depression and factories had cut their workforce by over 30%, so his father was very proud that he still had a job. Reed remembered how he and his father stood in front of the building where he worked. "Reed, this country is hurting right now, but no matter how bad things get, we will always need steel. Who knows, maybe someday you will follow in my footsteps." Reed had to laugh. Even at this age, the last thing he ever wanted to do was work in a place like this. He was a little shocked when he entered the employment office. It was only a little after 7, but there were already about 30 other guys in the waiting room. He approached a young woman sitting at a table in the corner. After asking him if she could help, he told her he wanted to apply for a job. She handed him a 3-page statement and warned him that it would be a long wait. It was almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon when he was called in for an interview. He recognized the man at the table as someone who had attended his father's funeral. After the pleasantries, Reed was asked to sit down. "First of all, Reed, I want to say how sorry I am about your dad. He was a wonderful guy. We'll all miss him here." Reed thanked him, and they talked a bit about his father, sharing a few anecdotes before getting down to business. "You haven't written anything about your military service here, Reed. As far as I'm concerned, you're a true war hero." "Sir, I would rather forget about the war altogether." "I understand, but this has something to do with the job I can offer you. What was your rank when you left?" The interviewer took notes as Reed explained how he rose to the rank of Chief Sergeant. "That's impressive, Reed. I'll send your application up. In addition to workers, we need management personnel. With my recommendation, I doubt you'll work near a blast furnace. Your father hasn't worked for quite some time. I'm sure you and your mother need an income as soon as possible, so I'll speed up the process. We should have something for you by next week," he said. Reed had mixed feelings on the way home. He really didn't like working in the factory, but working in an office didn't seem so bad. On the other hand, it was another step in life, becoming what he had always hated, just another steelworker from Northwest Indiana. His dreams of living in paradise with the woman of his dreams became more and more elusive. "How did everything go?" his mother asked when he entered. "Okay," he replied. "I talked to Mr. Bumman Wilkins. He was at my father's funeral. He said I should be working by next week, probably in an office." "Oh, honey, that's wonderful." The small smile he put on did not escape his mother. She felt sorry for him, but there was nothing she could do. She needed her son. "Where's Carol?" he asked. "She went to the store. She was sure you'd get the job and wanted to cook dinner for you." He had been thinking about one question for a long time since he returned home. It seemed like now was the right time to ask it. "Mom, I know you said she's here to help, but why does she live here? What happened to her parents?" "You know, her father drank a lot." "Yes, well, I didn't know him that well. He wasn't at home much, as far as I remember." "Because he was always sitting in some bar," his mother added. "I think one day her mother got tired of it and just left." "When was it?" Last year," she replied. "Anyway, her father actually started drinking after that. One day, your father was driving home and saw her sitting on a bench in Harrison Park, crying. He recognized her because you two had dated in school, so he stopped to see what could help. She returned with him and stayed like that. She went home a couple of times to get clothes and things, but she never saw her father or heard from him or her mother. Wow. Yeah, we're pretty much all her family now. She was wonderful. I don't know what I would have done without her when your dad got so sick. She'll make a wonderful wife for some lucky guy. Reed looked at his mother, who had a sly little smile on her face. Don't worry, Mom. I'm not looking for a wife, and besides, I already know the woman I'm going to marry. Nothing more was said, but both knew that his chances of finding and marrying Leilani were about 1 in a million. Over the next few months, life settled into an acceptable routine. Reed was assigned as the plant's security chief, which mainly involved scheduling the guards and making sure any problems were resolved quickly and efficiently. The pay was excellent, and he was home every night by 6 unless there was an emergency, which was rare. Home life was also quite ordinary. Reed's mother always felt like she had lost a part of herself, but gradually she regained her sense of humor and began to return to life. Carol seemed to be the glue that held everything together. She did most of the housework and cooked with Reed's mother. At first, Reed felt awkward knowing that she was washing his dirty laundry, but over time he just got used to it. That winter, Reed surprised everyone with a 12-inch, oval-screen television. Neither his mother nor Carol even knew what it was. He invited the technician from the electronics store to set everything up. Then he sat the two ladies down in front of him and turned on the TV. "Oh, God, how? How did he get there?" asked his mother. "Oh, Reed, it's one of those TVS, isn't it?" Carol suggested. "Yes," he replied. Reed had a big smile on his face. He was proud that he was able to give them such a luxurious gift. "And look," he continued, "if you don't like what's on this channel," he said, turning the knob on the front panel, "you can switch to another." "Can he see us?" asked his mother. "No, Mom, we can see and hear him, but he can't see or hear us." "It's magic," she said. "Yeah, in a way. I don't really know how it works, but the guy at the store said we'll be able to watch another channel soon. It'll be on 3 different channels, Mom." "Are you sure they can't hear what we're saying?" "I'm sure, Mom," he laughed. Over the next couple of weeks, word spread around the area about the newest television, and soon a crowd of friends and neighbors were gathering at their home to watch this miracle. One day, Reed came home to find his mother in the kitchen preparing dinner and Carol sitting in front of the TV with a guy he had never seen before. He was about their age and looked good. Subconsciously, Reed felt a pang of jealousy as he watched them flirt with each other. When the stranger reached out and placed it on Carol's knee, Hill made his presence known by making a sound. "About Hill, you're already home." Carol looked at the clock on the wall. "I didn't notice how quickly time passed." "This is Brad Wilson," she said as they both stood up to greet him. "Brad, this is Hill Prescott." "Nice to meet you," said the stranger, extending his hand. "Mutually," replied Hill with a slight frown as they shook hands. "Well, I have to go," Brad said. "Think about what I said, okay?" "I'll think about it," Carol replied. While Carol was saying goodbye to Brad, Hill went to the kitchen and kissed his mother on the cheek. "Smells delicious," he commented. "I hope so. We're having the famous stuffed pork chops today," she joked. "Who is this Brad? I don't like strangers in the house when I'm not here," he said quietly. "Oh, he's fine. You know Millie from our street. He's her nephew. I think he's a little infatuated with Carol. You know, she hasn't been on a date since she lives here. She needs to have fun sometimes." Hill wasn't sure if his mother was hinting at something, but her words definitely had an impact on him. He didn't know why, but he definitely felt jealous at the thought of Carol dating some guy. Is he really developing feelings for her? "Maybe we should all go out sometime this evening," he suggested. "I'm sure you need some rest, too. When was the last time you danced?" About Hill, it was so long ago. Besides, I don't think I would feel comfortable hugging another man, even just dancing. You should take Carol on a date. I'm telling you, darling. At that moment, Carol entered the room, and she stopped. "Sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to leave you in the kitchen. We got caught up in the program we were watching, and I lost track of time." "It's all right, dear," Mrs. Prescott replied. He seems like a nice young man. Yes, he asked me out. I told him I'd think about it. Hill suddenly felt a sense of urgency. Mom and I were just talking about the three of us going out tonight. Is it true? She almost screamed with a wide smile. I would really like it, Hill. Where will we go? I don't know, but I think you both deserve a night out. Let me find out at work, and I'll find a nice place for dinner, and then maybe we can go to a show or something. In a few nights, Hill took his mother and Carol to dinner at a nice restaurant and told them to choose which show they wanted to see. There were two in the city. They had just stopped at the popcorn stand when two guys approached Carol. Reed thought he had seen one of them somewhere, but didn't know the other. Hey, Carol, long time no see. Where did you go? Hi, Steve, she replied. I lived with Mrs. Prescott and helped after Mr. Prescott died. Both boys looked at Carol, then at Rita and his mother, trying to understand their relationship. It was an awkward moment, so Carol took the opportunity to introduce everyone. Steve, you remember Rita, don't you? He graduated from school with us. Yes, of course, Steve replied, shaking his hand. I heard you came back from the war with a bunch of medals. Well done. It's all in the past, Steve, where it belongs, he replied a little harshly. Steve looked again at Rita and Carol. You too, Carol immediately understood what he was getting at and was the first to speak. No, I live in their house and help Mrs. Prescott, but between me and by the hill there is nothing. I see, in that case, can I have a number that I can call you at? We could meet up sometime. They don't want me to give out their number, Steve. Why don't you give me yours and I'll call you? He took a napkin from the counter, but he didn't have a pen. Hill felt betrayed when his mother offered him a pen from her purse. Ridu didn't really like the movie. In fact, sitting in front of the big screen for an hour and a half, he didn't even know what it was about. All this time he was thinking about Carol. First this guy is at their house, now Steve. His mother was right. Sooner or later Carol would start dating again. Could he stand it? He got used to her presence. Was this love? Of course not, but he had already accepted that he would never find Leilani again. Maybe his mother was right. Maybe he should at least try to find out if there was a spark between him and Carol. When the film's credits ended and the lights in the theater turned on, I decided to develop the relationship and see where it leads. At the first opportunity, he discussed this with his mother, who was delighted. Carol was a blessing to her and her husband. She just knew that Carol would make a good wife for her son. Are you going to be okay if we leave you alone while we go out? For God's sake, Hill, I am not disabled. Of course, I'll be fine, she replied with slight irritation. Okay, then I'll take her to dinner and dance this weekend. One of the guys at work told me about a club called Plato's Place that plays live music. I already told you, don't worry about me, I can handle it. You've sacrificed a lot, it's time to start living for yourself. Go and have fun. He couldn't argue with her. Before the war, he had dreams of spending the rest of his life in paradise with Leilani, but instead he lived in a city he swore he would never live in, working for a company he swore he would never work for. Dreams are one thing, he told himself, but life is something completely different. Of course, Carol agreed to a second date. The group was still setting up when they entered. Looking around for a table, I noticed that there were at least twice as many guys as girls. He already knew that Carol was popular in town, and he hoped that he wouldn't sit at an empty table all evening watching her dance with other guys. As it turned out, he needn't have worried. Although 15 or 20 boys had invited her to dance, she refused every one of them, explaining that all her dances were reserved for her companion. A few guys looked a little annoyed, but the reputation of Rita preceded him. Nobody wanted to start a fight with a war hero. Carol knew that Mrs. Prescott would be sound asleep by the time they returned home. They both drank enough alcohol to feel relaxed, and she teased her all evening Rita on the dance floor. The time was right. She turned around, pulled their bodies towards each other, and kissed Rita on the lips as soon as they walked through the door. He wasn't shocked, in fact, he had the same thought. She just beat him to it. After a long, passionate kiss, with both arms around his neck, Carol looked into his eyes. Hill, do you like me? Of course I like you. I really like you. Then show me how much you love me. Please make love to me today. Hill, she begged. Hill wasn't sure if it was because of the alcohol, or because she had been teasing him on the dance floor all evening, or if he actually had feelings for her. Maybe it was a combination of everything. But at that moment, he wanted to have her more than anything. He took her into his arms and kissed her back. In the hands of a skilled manipulator like Carol, Hill had no chance. Even his own mother believed that she was the right girl for her son. 6 months later, Carol had an engagement ring, and 4 months later, the happy couple stood in front of a priest and exchanged wedding vows in front of family and friends. Carol, not wanting to be embarrassed in front of everyone, didn't even invite her father. As a result, Tom Bennett, best friend Hill from the plant, walked her down the aisle before joining the groom as best man. The reception was held in the newlyweds' courtyard. Hill and Carol worked hard to make sure everything was perfect. A few days before Hill, I walked around the yard 3 times with an insecticide sprayer to kill as many mosquitoes as possible. Carol found 2 large folding tables at a thrift store, one for gifts and one for food. While she was at the Ben Franklin store to buy paper tablecloths for the tables, Carol noticed some paper garlands and a bunch of Chinese lanterns to decorate the yard. Hill didn't want his mother and wife to cook, so he splurged and hired a local restaurant to do the catering. For Mary Prescott, it was one of the 3 happiest days of her life, the first 2 being her own wedding and the birth of her son. Unfortunately, no matter how hard she tried, Mary could not ignore the sadness that lurked beneath the surface. At some point, she simply could not hold back her tears, so she went into the house so that no one could see her. I saw her go inside and guessed what was bothering her. He gave her a few minutes to be alone and then went to support her. He found her sitting on the edge of the bed, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. "What happened, Mom?" She looked at him and felt bad that he found her crying on his wedding day. Hill, darling, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to see me like this." He came and sat down next to her. "It's because of Dad, right?" She nodded. "He would be so proud of you today. I just wished he was here, honey." She wiped away more tears between sobs. "Mom, I have a feeling he's looking at us right now. He's got a big stupid smile on his face, and he's thinking, stupid woman, doesn't she know I'm still with her? Maybe not physically, but I will never leave her heart." She forced herself to smile when he mentioned her husband's stupid smile. "I know, dear. Everything will be fine. Go downstairs to your guests. I'll join you soon." "Okay, Mom," he said, kissing her cheek. As soon as Hill left, she picked up a photograph of her late husband and kissed it. "He's right," she said out loud. "I know you look at us with pride. I love you so much." With these words, she wiped her eyes again, smiled bravely, and returned to the celebration. The honeymoon was short but fun. After Hill secretly asked neighbors on both sides to look after his mother several times a day, he and Carol spent 5 days in the Wisconsin Dells. Neither of them had been there before, so they saw all the sights and watched shows during the day and had sex every night. Carol desperately wanted to show him all the things she liked in bed. For the next 2 years, everything went smoothly. Mother Rita insisted that he and Carol take the master bedroom while she moved into the smaller one. They bought her a new, full-size bed and a new set to make her feel as comfortable as possible. Hill did well at Inland Steel and got a promotion he didn't even ask for. He made several good friends, most of whom were married, so he and Carol met with them often. Life was good, though. From time to time, Hill secretly thought about Leilani. How is she? Is she happy? Has she forgotten him already? Most likely, he wondered. Carol was also happy with her life. She had everything she ever wanted. A wonderful husband with a well-paying job who came home every night without the smell of alcohol. Having Mrs. Wayne Prescott there to talk to and confide in was like having the mother she never had. The house was paid for, so when Mary died, She and Reed would get it for free. She even became friends with the wives of Reed's colleagues and friends. There were informal gatherings, holiday parties, and the occasional night out on the town with friends. Life was good. She would be stupid to do anything to jeopardize that. So why did she start to feel anxious? Reed was attentive in bed and made a more than satisfactory lover. He was always so gentle. Several times she tried to get him to be rougher, but he didn't seem to succeed. He tried, she knew he tried, started out quite forceful, but soon became his gentle, loving self again. Sometimes she remembered some of the guys she dated before Reed. They were young and aggressive. She missed this. Some of those guys still lived in town. Most were married, but not all. Married people, she realized, would be safer. They had as much to lose as she did. They wouldn't risk showing off to their friends at the bar. She decided that she wouldn't specifically look for them, but if the opportunity presented itself, and it would be safe. They had been married a little more than 4 years when Tom Bennett, Reed's best man and the man who walked his bride down the aisle, asked a friend for a beer after work. Yeah, sure, but it has to be quick. I don't want to be home too late." "No problem," Tom replied. They stopped at a small neighborhood diner a few blocks from the plant, each taking a stool at the bar and ordering a couple of beers. "So, Tom, what happened?" "Reed, it's none of my business, but you're my friend, and—" He hesitated. "Well, I just think you should know." Reed realized that his friend didn't know how to say what he wanted. "What, Tom? What should I know?" Tom paused to collect his thoughts, then continued with a small sigh. "Do you remember when you showed me your father's car a while ago?" "Certainly. You said Carol uses it to drive to the store and run errands when you're not home." "Yes, she still uses it. Why?" "Well, I had a lot of things to do on the weekday, so I took the day off yesterday. I was leaving the IGA with groceries, and I saw Carol drive up. She parked about 70 or 80 feet away from me, but I recognized the car immediately. I was going to shout hello to her when she got out of the car, but she immediately changed into another one. It seemed to me that she leaned over and kissed the driver, but I couldn't tell for sure. Then they started driving out of the parking lot. So I got in my car and followed them. They... Now Reed was curious. "What are they, Tom?" "Well, they went to that little motel on Algonquin Street." He heard his friend inhale sharply. "Sorry, buddy. I waited to see what was going on." She stayed in the car while he went into the office. When he came out, she met him in front of number 110. They kissed before going inside. I didn't linger any longer. "I'm sorry, friend. I really am. I spent the whole night wondering if I should tell you this. I decided that you were like me, and I know that I would like to know." Reed was depressed. He never thought that his wife was cheating on him. Hell, she was with his mother almost all the time, or so he thought. "Thanks for telling me, Tom. I'll ask her what's going on. I hope she has a logical explanation, but if she's cheating on me, I won't stand for it." "Well, give her a chance to explain everything. Like you said, it was probably all quite innocent," Tom replied, knowing that the chances of innocence were practically nil. They quickly finished their beer and then went their separate ways. Carol was in the basement doing laundry when he came in, so he asked his mother to join him in the living room to talk. "Mom, do you ever go with Carol when she goes shopping?" "Sometimes, but not always. Why?" "How long is she gone when she goes alone?" "Oh, I don't know. Sometimes it's only 20 or 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, depending on how much shopping she has." "And that's it? No more than an hour?" "No, she stays longer when she visits her friends. Then she might be gone for 2 or 3 hours. What's the matter, dear? Are you still worried about me being alone?" "No, Mom, that's not the point. Did she go see her friends yesterday?" Yeah, for a while. Why?" "Because Tom Bennett saw her going into a motel room with some guy he didn't know." It took his mother a few seconds to realize what her son was hinting at. You think she's cheating on you? Oh, Reed, she would never do that." "Mom, I can't think of any other reason for her to be in a motel room with another man, can you? She couldn't, but she wasn't ready to accept the obvious. I'm sure there's a logical explanation, Reed. This girl loves you. I can't believe she's cheating on you. At that moment, Carol came up the stairs with a laundry basket. Hello, dear. She surprised them both and gave them a deer caught in the headlights look. What happened? Is everything okay? Did something happen at work? Come here, Carol. I need to talk to you. She started walking towards the living room. Put down the laundry basket for now. This is important. She placed the basket on the floor and walked over, sitting next to Mary on the sofa. Her mind was racing with questions. She expected him to say that he had lost his job or that he was sick. Reed wasn't one to beat around the bush. Yesterday, Tom Bennett saw you walk into a motel room with some guy he didn't know. What's going on, Carol? Now she had the look of a deer caught in the headlights. She was completely unprepared for this. She and Arnie Becker had been dating for several months without a hint of exposure. She didn't have time to come up with a good story, so she came up with the first thing that came to mind. Oh, honey, it was just an old friend. He left town a few years ago and only came back for a couple of days. That's why he was staying at the motel. We met by chance at the store. I wanted to tell him all about you and our wonderful life, so I went to his room to talk a little, that's all. Reed didn't look convinced. Honey, do you think I cheated on you? Nothing happened, honey, I swear. We just talked for a little while. His mother was willing to believe her story, but Reed knew better. Carol, you didn't meet him at the store. Tom saw you park in your dad's car. He saw you get into another guy's car and follow you to the motel. He saw you kiss that guy. He said, raising his voice, You don't believe me? Reed, I would never cheat on you. I love you. Why did you lie? I didn't lie. I didn't mean we met inside the store. We met in the parking lot before I went inside. The kiss didn't mean anything. He was a good friend, and I hadn't seen him in a long time, so I gave a little welcome kiss, that's all. Reed looked at his mother, who begged with her eyes to believe Carol's story. He didn't believe it, not entirely, but he had no proof otherwise. Reed, please trust me, nothing happened. I probably shouldn't have gone to his room, but I really wanted to tell him about you and your mother and everything. What's his name? What? His name, if he's such a good friend, you should know his name. Again, she had to think quickly and come up with a fake name. She realized it wasn't that easy, especially when she was caught off guard. Adam, she declared, Adam Jones. Adam Jones? We went to school with him. No, his parents and mine were good friends back in the day. Adam and I knew each other when we were kids. Carol, I will not tolerate cheating. If I find out that you are seeing other guys behind my back, I swear I will divorce you. Later that night, lying next to each other in bed, Carol asked, You believe me about yesterday, don't you, honey? I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'd rather not find out you lied to me, Carol. There was no sex that night. Carol tried to test the waters, but he abruptly stopped her. She was incredibly worried. What were the chances that someone would see them like that? She couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, Reed took his father's car keys from his wife's purse before heading to work. On the way to work, he came up with a plan. It might not provide any evidence, but he could find out whether his wife was lying to him or not. He told his boss that he needed to take a long lunch break, then headed to the Cherry Lane Inn that Tom had mentioned. He asked the receptionist if they had a guest named Adam Jones. The young man behind the counter looked a little puzzled as he checked the register. Sorry, sir, we don't have Mr. Jones among our guests. Has he left yet? He was never here. Well, who was in room 110 then? Sorry, sir, I cannot provide this information. We do not disclose the names of our guests. Maybe $20 will change your mind, Reed said, pulling out his wallet. The receptionist looked around, then picked up the 2 tens that Reed had placed on the counter and began looking for a name. Arnold Becker, he said. Has he stayed here before? Oh yes, he comes 2 or 3 times a month with a very beautiful lady. Reed took some photos that he asked from his friends. He laid them out on the counter along with Carol's photo. Can you tell which of these women came here? Yes, this one, the administrator replied, pointing to a photo of his wife. Thank you, Reed said. He turned to leave, but thought of one more question. One more question. You said they came 2 or 3 times a month. How long have they been doing this? I'm not really sure. 4 or 5 months, maybe 6. Thanks again. Is this your wife? Asked the administrator. For now, Reed replied as he walked away. He was too upset to return to work. He stopped at a restaurant for a cup of coffee and used a payphone to call and tell his boss he needed the rest of the day. Sitting over a cup of coffee, his anger began to rise. When he returned home, he was already seething with rage. Carol was surprised to see him so early, and one look at his face told her she was in trouble. Where is Mom? She's in her room, taking a nap. Is everything okay, honey? You're here so early. No, nothing's really wrong. You lied to me. Adam Jones, right? What about Arnold Becker? You've been dating him for months, but I don't need to tell you that, right? How many were there before him? He saw the horror in her eyes. Come on, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me how much you love me and would never cheat on me. How about we go to the Cherry Lane Motel and you tell all this to the receptionist? He thinks you're pretty, by the way. You should keep him in mind for the next candidate. Mary, hearing the noise, came out to see what was happening. She saw Carol sitting at the kitchen table crying and heard her son's last words, but didn't hear enough to fully understand what he was saying. Reed, darling, what's going on? She lied to us, Mom. She's been seeing another guy for months. She told you she was visiting her friends, but she went to the motel with Arnold Becker the whole time. She felt her heart breaking. Oh, Carol, is it true? How could you? You were like family. I just don't understand how you could do something like that. Carol couldn't answer. She just cried. She couldn't believe she had ruined everything. Of course, she would beg and ask for forgiveness, but she didn't expect that. As for Reed, he was like a scout when it came to truth and lies. He believed in honesty and always trying to do the right thing, and believed that others should feel the same. He wouldn't associate with someone he knew to be dishonest. After a few minutes of sobbing, Carol realized that the voices had stopped. She raised her head and saw that she was alone. She heard Reed talking in the living room. She wiped her eyes with a towel and slowly walked towards the door. What she saw was truly heartbreaking. Reed hugged his mother, trying to comfort her, while she cried like a child. He looked at Carol with incredible anger in his eyes. I'm so sorry, she sobbed as she ran into their bedroom and closed the door. She fell on the bed and cried again. She might be able to get him to forgive her for his own pain, but he would never forgive her for the pain she had caused his mother. Of that she was sure. Carol, wake up. I want to talk to you. She was pushed. She realized that she had cried herself to sleep. Mary was sitting on the edge of the bed. Her voice was different. Never before had Carol heard Mrs. Prescott speak with such indifference. I want to know why, she demanded. Why did you do something so mean? We took you in when you needed help. Frank and I treated you like a daughter. I talked my son into marrying you because I thought you'd make a great wife for him, and you're betraying us like this. Why? I don't know, Mary. I guess I just became selfish. When I married Reed, I had everything I wanted, but over time, I guess I started to become complacent. What do you do when you have everything? What do you want? You want more, of course. First of all, I missed the intense sex I had when I was younger. Then one day I saw Arnie. I knew him before, and he works as a department manager at a sports store on York Road. I tried to resist, it's true, but I constantly found excuses to go there. Every time I saw him, I couldn't stop dreaming. The first time we went to a hotel together, it was only supposed to be one time. I thought no one would ever know. When I saw him again and he offered to do it again, I thought that since it worked once, we might as well do it again. The next time, we did it a couple of times a week, and no one knew. I can't believe Tom saw us. Mrs. Nye Prescott was disappointed. She hoped Carol would say something that might justify her actions, or at least give her son a reason to forgive her. Unfortunately, she didn't hear anything like that. Well, he's going to divorce you, and I won't try to talk him out of it. I don't think I could even if I tried. I know, Mary. I really ruined everything, didn't I? Yes, you really did. I can't tell you how angry and disappointed I am in you, Carol. I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive the way you hurt my son. I know it doesn't mean much, but I'm really sorry. I never wanted this. I'm sure he'll ask you to leave soon. Where will you go? I don't know. I'll probably go check to see if my father is still alive in the house. I haven't talked to him in years, so I don't know how he'll accept me, but I don't really have any other place. Do you have money? No, I don't have anything. Well, I'm sure Reed will be fair once he gets over his pain and anger. Until then, I have about $200. You can have it. Oh, Mary, I can't take your money, Carol said, crying. Nonsense. I've been saving these to give you and Reed something special for your anniversary. But that doesn't look like that's going to happen, so you might as well take them. I won't need them. Carol thanked Mrs. Prescott endlessly for her generosity, but was still worried about what would happen next. She didn't know if her father was even alive. As Mary stood up to leave the bedroom, Carol realized they were alone in the house. Where's Reed? Is he back at work? No, it's after 6 o'clock, for God's sake. You've been asleep for hours. I didn't want to cook, so he ordered pizza. He went to pick it up. You should get up and clean yourself up. He'll be back any minute. The next day, Reed spoke with his boss about his family problems and asked for a week's leave. Sympathetic to his plight, Chief Reed arranged for leave starting the next day and then gave him the rest of the day. Carol knew her stay in the house would be short, so she reluctantly accepted $200 from Mary and left. Reed still held the keys to her father's car, so she walked 3.5 miles to her old house to see if her father would accept her. She wasn't even sure he still lived there, so she knocked on the door a few times before trying it. The door was open. She was completely stunned to see how someone could live in such chaos. There were empty liquor and beer bottles everywhere. The sink was full of dirty dishes. Clothes were strewn everywhere, and the house smelled terrible. The furniture was still the same. The carpet in the living room was still the same, so apparently he still lived here. She checked her old room and found it just as she had left it, only dirtier. She assumed he was at work. Maybe she should clean the house first to show her usefulness before he comes home. She went to the little corner grocery store she was sent to so often as a child and bought cleaning supplies. Reed used his day off to find a lawyer. He called whoever had the biggest ad in the phone book and got an appointment for that day. It was a little after 4 when he came home. He greeted his mother and looked around. "Where's Carol?" She thought you would kick her out of the house, so she went to see if she could go back to live with her father. What time did she leave? About 8:30. Why? So she left you here alone all day? He asked angrily. Young man, you're really starting to piss me off. I'm not some helpless old lady who can't take care of herself. I've taken care of you and your father for years without a problem, and I could do it again if I had to. What do you think, that you'll divorce Carol, but she'll still be here as a housekeeper or something? Don't be ridiculous. If you're going to divorce her, you both need to move on with your lives. Is that what you're going to do? She hadn't yelled at him like that since she was a child. This startled him a little. What am I? Are you going to divorce her? His mother repeated. Oh, yes, of course. I won't tolerate her cheating, that's for sure. I saw the lawyer today. He said the documents will be ready in a couple of days. You know she has absolutely nothing, no money, no job. She took care of your father and me for a long time before you returned, and she always did more than her share of the housework, even after your wedding. This must be worth something, dear. I hope you plan to be fair to her. I plan, he replied. When I explained everything to the lawyer, he offered to pay her 20% of my net income for several years, which is about $40 a week. That's more than she would earn as a housekeeper. I think that sounds fair, she agreed. Did she say she'd be back today? I don't know. I think it depends on whether her father lets her stay or not. By 6 o'clock in the evening, Carol had aired the house, cleaned her room, scrubbed the kitchen floor, washed the laundry, vacuumed the living room carpet, and washed the dishes. She began preparing dinner, hoping the aroma of home-cooked food would increase her chances of staying. Sitting at the kitchen table, eating dinner alone, Carol remembered why her mother left and why she did too. She was sure that her father was now sitting in some bar and assumed that he would not return until midnight, if not later. By 11, she was too tired to wait any longer. Most likely, when he returns, he will be too drunk to speak. The conversation will have to be postponed until the morning. Unfortunately, without an alarm clock, Carol overslept. She jumped up when she saw how light it was outside. Damn, she cursed, quickly getting dressed. She rushed to the kitchen, hoping he hadn't left for work yet, but there was no one there. In fact, there was no sign that he was even there. The coffee pot was empty, there were no dishes in the sink, nothing. She checked his bed, but it was made and unused. Maybe he has a girlfriend and he spends the night with her. Ridiculous, she thought. What woman in her right mind would choose him as her boyfriend? The only thing she could think of was to check the garage, see if his car was there. It was there. What the hell? Now she began to worry. Where could he be? She wondered if the neighbors of the Crawfords still lived nearby. They were always kind to her growing up. She went and knocked on their door. Carol Johnson, is that you? Mrs. Reyes Crawford looked a little older, but still had a friendly smile. Yes, Mrs. Warsey Crawford, I came to check on my father, but he didn't come home last night, and I'm worried about him. Do you know where he is? Oh, yes, Carol. He was taken away in an ambulance a few days ago. I don't know what happened. I'm sure he's still there. It didn't sound good. Thank you, Mrs. Odd Crawford. I'll go check at the hospital, she said. She ran to the phone, but found that it was switched off. Crap. Her father always had a bad habit of leaving the keys in the car when it was in the garage. She thought, exactly. She went to the hospital and found out at the reception. She was given bad news. Her father had cirrhosis of the liver and had only days to live. She didn't even recognize him when she entered his room, but he recognized her. Carol, he said weakly, how did you know I was here? I came to check on you, Dad. Mrs. Corsa Crawford saw you taken away in the ambulance. How are you? He tried to laugh. What do you think, honey? I'm dying. All the drinking has finally caught up with me. Look, when you get home, look for Philip Barclay in the address book next to the phone. He's my lawyer. He has my will. It's not much, but I left everything to you. Carol stayed with him until she was kicked out around dinner time. She needed things, so she headed back to the only happy home she had ever known. After she told Reed and Mary about her situation and said that she would be living in her old house from now on, Reed's mother left so they could talk privately. They discussed the terms of the divorce. Since there were no children and the house was still in his mother's name, it was quite simple, and Carol agreed to child support. It was all coming to an end, but before he left, Reed had to ask, Carol, honestly, have you ever really loved me? She looked into his eyes and realized that she could not lie. I admired you. You were everything I imagined a man to be. I knew you would treat me well and take care of me throughout my life, but I'm not sure I even know what love is, Reed. Right. Now my father is in the hospital. He only has a few days left to live, and I cannot find love in my heart for him, even now. My mother did not love him. She obviously did not love me either, otherwise she would not have left me when gone. The only thing my father ever loved was drinking. Maybe it's hereditary, but I'm not sure I'm capable of truly loving anyone, certainly not the way you love Lilani. I knew that when you married me, you did it out of a sense of duty and not because you loved me. I knew it, even if you didn't realize it yourself. but I don't regret it. The last few years have been the happiest of my life, and I thank you for that. I'm sorry I hurt you and your mother. You didn't deserve this. I'm really sorry." Reed helped her pack her things. Everything she owned was piled in the back seat of her father's car. As she drove away from the house, she took another look at Reed and his mother standing on the porch, tears streaming down her face. She cried all the way to her new home. The next day, Reed was out most of the day and seemed a little worried when he returned home in the afternoon. When his mother asked what happened, he said he first went to Arnold Becker's house and told his wife about his affair with Carol. At first, Becker's wife didn't believe him, but the more he talked, the more convinced she became. When he left, Reed was almost certain that Becker's divorce was on the horizon. He drove home after that, but the situation still seemed unfinished. He turned around in the parking lot and drove to the store where Becker worked. He questioned until someone pointed out the troublemaker. "Arnold Becker?" "Yes, how can I help you?" "I am Carol's husband. I wanted to tell you that since you destroyed my marriage, I destroyed yours. I just came from your wife and told her in detail about your affair with my wife. Your wife is quite angry. I hope she will wait for you with a shotgun tonight." He watched with pleasure as the blood drained from Becker's face. As he turned to leave, Becker grabbed him and began swearing at him. "You scoundrel," he shouted, raising his hand to strike. Reed saw this from afar and dodged the blow before slamming his right hand right into his opponent's nose. Becker collapsed to the floor. Reed spent the next 2 hours in the police station, but was never locked up. He had several witnesses who said he acted in self-defense. His mother scolded him for his lack of self-control, but she couldn't blame him. If she were a man, she would have done the same. Several months passed when Reed came home and made an announcement. He still had 2 weeks of vacation left, so he decided to take his mother to Hawaii. It was like a dream come true. Ever since she read her son's letters about the tropical paradise, she had wanted to see it with her own eyes, but she never thought it would happen. Reed couldn't believe how things had changed. There were tall buildings and 4-lane paved streets everywhere. Of course, his first destination was the house where Leilani lived. They were no longer there. On the site of their home, there were now office buildings. The place that was still there was New Hope Church, so Reed took his mother there for Sunday service. He couldn't help but notice that the man leading the service limped badly and wondered if he had been in the war. At the end of the service, Mary wanted to thank the pastor for his sermon. This gave Reed cause to ask if he knew Leilani or her family. "I remember you. You were the young man who kissed her in front of the church when the bombing began. She begged you to come inside, but you said you had to get to your ship." "Are you a pastor?" Reed couldn't believe that this was the same person who had been so understanding that day and directed Leilani inside. "I heard you went to the front immediately after the attack." "Yeah, that's how I got it," he said, pointing to his bad leg. "Omaha Beach on D-Day." "Sorry," Reed said. "My son received the Medal of Honor," his mother added. "This doesn't surprise me," the pastor commented. "Enough chatter. Does Leilani still live here? I went to her old house, but it's gone." "No, everything changed after the war. It has become so expensive to live here that I'm thinking about moving. Leilani's father got sick, and with the rise in prices, they moved to the mainland. Mr. Prithvish Conti had a brother somewhere in the States." "Conti? Is that her last name?" "Yes, her father was from the States, but her mother was full-blooded Hawaiian." "So you don't know where they moved? What state? Nothing?" "No, I'm sorry. I wish I could help. You know, Leilani cried for weeks after that day. That kind of love only comes to a person once in a lifetime. I hope you find it, son." He tried. In the years that followed, his mother watched with sadness as one lead after another turned out to be a dead end. In the end, he practically gave up. Despite his mother's best efforts, he was not interested in finding another woman to love. He resigned himself to the idea that he would remain a confirmed bachelor for the rest of his life. In early 1961, Reed received an official letter from the Navy. He just stood there and looked at the envelope. "I'm too old to be drafted," he joked to his mother. "Well, open it and find out what it's about," she replied. It was an invitation to the 20-year memorial service at Pearl Harbor. At first he said he wouldn't go, but Mary said she'd like to go to Hawaii again. In the end, he decided to go and took a vacation. When they arrived, they were treated like royalty. Reed learned that he, along with 3 other Medal of Honor recipients for that infamous day in history, would be honored during the ceremony. Mary stood in the area reserved for family members, her heart ready to burst with pride as her son's name was announced and his heroism was briefly recounted on that tragic day. As the announcer moved on to the next honoree, a middle-aged woman approached Mary. She had long, silky black hair and eyes as dark as midnight. She had a 35mm camera hanging around her neck, and she seemed to know how to use it. She caught Mary's attention when she spoke. "Sorry, madam, I couldn't help but notice how you lit up when you talked about Reed Prescott. Are you related to him?" Mary took one look at the woman and instantly recognized her. "Leilani," she whispered. The photographer was shocked. "How did you know my name?" I can't believe it. I had a feeling, I just knew you'd be here. I'm his mother, and I've been waiting 20 years to meet you." Leilani assumed that Reed had married a long time ago and had probably already forgotten about her. Mary's words were like a blessing from heaven. The 2 women talked for most of the ceremony, but Leilani had a few more pictures to take. She found Mary again as the events were ending. She stood with her back to Reed, who unconsciously walked towards them. "Mom," he shouted, still a few feet away, "are you okay? I know the ceremony was long." "I'm fine, son. I found someone I want to introduce you to." Leilani turned around. "Hey, Reed." He felt his legs become weak. He took a deep breath, his heart beginning to beat like a drum. "Oh my God, is it really you?" She handed her camera to Mary and threw herself into his arms, showering him with kisses. The entire crowd around them began to applaud as they saw 2 people so deeply in love meet again. This was the beginning of a long and happy life together. Leilani worked on the East Coast as a press photographer. She was married, but her husband, like Carol, was caught cheating. She also had a teenage daughter in her 2nd year of high school. It took several months of weekend visits, letters, and long-distance calls, but Reed and Leilani finally married in June 1962. Leilani's daughter sat in the front row, hugging her new grandmother, and watched eagerly as her mother and stepfather exchanged vows with a love that remained intact, even after 20 years of separation. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even click to the next one.